First breakout session of the afternoon or morning, still morning for some of you. I'm Karen Mosley, President and CEO of Hero, and it's my pleasure to launch this meeting, this session, Nice is the Counterfeit of Kind, with Curtis Morley and Jen Shandio. Curtis is an emotionologist, best-selling author, award-winning entrepreneur, patent holder, mountain climber, and internationally recognized keynote speaker. His signature keynotes, powerful master classes, and upcoming book provide tools to help individuals recognize and replace counterfeit emotions. Before launching Counterfeit Emotions, Curtis built and led 5 companies, achieving as high as 20 times growth and serving 96 of the Fortune 100. That is impressive, Curtis. He's a Wall Street Journal best-selling author of the book, The Entrepreneur's Paradox, and has worked with NASA, Amazon, Apple, Disney, Walmart, Coca-Cola, Mercedes, and Goldman Sachs. He has earned recognition, including Entrepreneur of the Year, 40 Under 40, and Inc. 500, 5,000 Hall of Fame status, and has been heard on over 1,000 podcasts and radio stations. He is a passionate educator, and I promise you, you are going to be well entertained and enthralled in the presentation that he has lined up for us, along with Jen Shandio, who is Chief Nursing Officer for Intermountain Health Riverton Hospital. Jen is a seasoned healthcare leader with over 12 years of experience, including acute, ambulatory, and hospice settings. She has successfully guided numerous teams through complex change management. Her education and clinical systems leadership has built a commitment to nurturing the next generation of healthcare leaders, which has led to the improvement of engagement and quality outcomes, leading to a top 100 hospital. Jen has 3 children, and in her spare time, she attends sporting events, loves traveling with her family, running, reading, and learning. And I'm excited to get us started. So, welcome, Curtis and Jen. Welcome, Maggie. Maggie is here. She's going to be assisting with moderator responsibilities and monitoring the Q&A. Maggie is on the Hero Board of Directors. Thanks, Maggie, for being here. A reminder to use your mute button. If you don't, we will. And please feel free to engage in the chat. With that, Curtis, it's all yours.
Wonderful. Thank you. And hasn't it been an amazing day today? Like, truly, I've just been blown away by the sessions, starting with MJ and then Jill. Oh, wow. So powerful. And then MJ, I see you on there. Hey, MJ. Um, yeah, Jill. And then we were blessed to hear such a beautiful talk about kindness at the end as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're very excited and to talk about something that is really critical. And in MJ's presentation, she talked about the cost of incivility. Today, in this session, we're going to talk about nice versus kind and how nice is a defense mechanism to avoid conflict and how kind is a virtue that has real results. And so if we can dive in, give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. Can everybody see the screen? Excellent. Wonderful. So not only does incivility have a cost, but niceness also has a cost. And the current estimate is that $493 billion a year is lost in nice culture. 493 billion, $500 billion, that's just in the US, is lost every year because of nice culture. And nice culture, we'll get into what that means, but we're going to have a lot of fun. So, what I want you to do is I want you to have your phones ready. Everybody, make sure your phone is ready to be able to scan a couple QR codes. We're going to do a couple little fun activities as we go. And we're also going to be interactive in the chat. So we'll ask some questions and get your fingers on the keyboard and get your phones ready because we're going to dive deep into kind versus nice. So here we go. And to set the stage, the premise behind behind this dyad of emotions, or this pair of emotions, is based in the counterfeit emotions framework or methodology, which, oh, I forgot to introduce us. Let's just do a quick introduction. I know, Karen, you did such a wonderful job. If you'd like to connect to Jen or myself, this is your first QR code. Grab your phone, scan those two QR codes, and we'd be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. And like Karen said, I'm an emotionologist, and Jen is Chief Nursing Officer at Intermountain Health. And we've had the pleasure of working together with this methodology. And so we're super excited about that. So go ahead and scan. Love to be connected with all of you here. So now let's dive in to what is a counterfeit emotion. A counterfeit emotion, by definition, is an emotion that looks, acts, and feels like an authentic emotion, but creates a destructive pattern of disconnection in our lives. Now, you might think, what's an example of that? And one thing that was amazing with Brene Brown's research is that she surveyed over 7,000 people. And in doing so, it was actually pretty amazing. She found that people on average, the actually let's do a quick little survey here in the chat window. How many emotions do you think people were able to identify in the moment? So right when they are feeling that emotion, how many emotions were they able to identify? Aaron says five. Karen says five. Three. Oh, two. We got all the way down to two. Amy says two. Five. You guys are right in line. They were able to identify three emotions: mad, sad, and glad. So they were able to identify that I'm happy, I'm despondent, I'm sad or depressed, and I'm upset or angry. Mad, sad, and glad were the only emotions that they were able to identify on the spot, which is pretty astounding. And if we let's do that ourselves. So everybody pull out your phone, scan the QR code. It's going to pop up a message in your messaging app, and put your name in there and identify what emotion you're feeling right now. Tell me, what emotion are you feeling this moment? Let's see those pop through. Oh, here we come. Oh, engaged. All right, Karen. That's excellent. Oh, we've got somebody, no name, but hopeful. Awesome. Feeling hopeful. Aaron is feeling curious. Oh, I love that, Aaron. Such a transcendent emotion. MJ is feeling elevated, curious, and interested. Okay, you guys are very emotionally in tune. Nice job, everyone, for doing this. Oh, Amy says intrigued. Maggie says, oh, Maggie was hopeful. Oh, we've got someone feeling distracted, content. This is wonderful because most people in the moment, if you just ask them what they're feeling, they aren't attuned to what they're feeling. They aren't attuned to the emotions inside themselves. And those emotions are really critical to understanding how to create a kind culture. And and so as we continue, there's four criteria to understand if you're feeling an authentic or a counterfeit emotion. And the four criteria, we won't get into it here because of time constraints, but their connection. Does this emotion connect me or does it disconnect me? Direction, where does this emotion take me? Does it take me forward, upward, or bring me together? Or does it actually just spin on itself? And motivation, is it motivated? Every authentic emotion is motivated in two meta emotions, and those meta emotions are love and surrender. Every authentic emotion is based in love and surrender. Every counterfeit emotion is based in two other meta emotions, fear and control. Those are the ways to know what your motivation. So when you're feeling an emotion, For example, curiosity. MJ, you said you're feeling curious, right? Um, that is an authentic emotion. And we'll talk about some of the different pairs here. Um, and the you can identify it by those criteria. The last is valuation. What does this emotion value me at? And what does it value you at? If it values us as having an infinite and divine worth, that's authentic. If it values us as just objects or things to be played with or things to move around on the chessboard, that's a counterfeit emotion. And the dyads we're going to talk about today, there's actually 42 different dyads. I'll show them here quickly because we're going to dive into one in specific. But there's emotions like pain and misery, excellence and perfectionism. For leaders, that's a big one. Guilt versus shame, advocacy versus anger. I know with what's going on in the world right now, there's a lot of anger. And that's a counterfeit emotion to advocacy, to actually making a difference and being constructive instead of destructive. Power and control, hope versus expectation, joy and pleasure, um, and multiple different emotion. Again, we won't get into the full list because we're going to talk about kind versus nice. And to start us off, what is nice? Who, let's just throw it in the chat. What is your definition of nice? Karen, oh bless your heart. Love ya. Placating. Oh, Maggie, that's so good. Avoiding conflict or oh yes, being pleasant so people dysregulate it. The pretense of kindness with the purpose of people pleasing. Oh, you guys, this is so good. We Yes, this is a highly emotionally intelligent crowd here. This is so good. Um, Believe it or not, nice comes from, if you look at the etymology of the word, nice comes from the Latin word nescius, which means ignorant. Can you believe that? I saw MJ's big open mouth. Yes, nice comes from the word nescience, nescius or nescience in Old English, which also means ignorance. And if you think about this, if you think about people-pleasing behavior, you think about, oh, I'm not going to give my opinion. I'm just going to be over here ignorantly agreeing with everything you say. It's the perfect definition for the word nice is I'm just going to smile, be pleasant. I'm going to have no opinion, be ignorant. Whatever you say, I'm going to be the doormat, the people pleaser, the yes man, and and that's how we're going to play this game. And this is the exact behavior that produces $493 billion in lost revenue every year. It's the exact same behavior. So, what are some of those kind behaviors versus nice behaviors? All right, this is where I want you to um, un I want you to unclick your mute button and let's talk about this. What do you do when you see the spinach in the teeth? Right? Jill kind of talked about this, with the toilet paper, right? What do you do when you see the spinach in the teeth?
Well, you have to say something. You have to.
Well,
I
let's
start
take
with nonverbal. I'm going
Like,
like,
oh,
you do the hey, dig out the green.
you just like whisper to your friend, right?
Yeah. And that's what kind does. Nice says, "Oh, I don't want to embarrass you. I don't want to embarrass you, so I'm not going to say anything." But what that means is that you're going to embarrass them in front of 13 other nice people that you've got this big slab of green in between your teeth. And and that's the difference between nice and kind. And I experienced this. I had a personal experience with this myself, unfortunately, is when I spoke at the Silicon Slope Summit. It's a big conference. It's got 20, 30,000 people in attendance. In Utah, because of our ski slopes, we're called the Silicon Slopes versus the Silicon Valley of Utah or California. And so they have a summit called the Silicon Slopes Summit. And and I got up on stage and I gave this amazing presentation. I promise it was incredible. And I'm very animated when I talk, and I use my hands a lot, and I point and I move around the stage. And as I got off the stage, the organizer, or well, first, as I got off the stage, I looked down and I realized my zipper had been down the entire presentation, you guys. It was, oh dear. And I walked off down the stairs off the stage and into the little backstage area, and the organizer was right there, and he watched me zip up my zipper, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I saw that before you went on stage, but I didn't want to embarrass you." He was being nice. He was being incredibly nice by not telling me, but he wasn't being kind. And instead, I stood on stage in front of a multitude of CEOs and all of these wonderful people with my fly down. And so that illustrates the difference between being kind versus being nice. Kind would have said, "Hey, Curtis, hold on, the barn doors are open. We got to fix this destructive behavior before you go up on stage." And that really kind of illustrates that. But let's talk about some of the differences. Be Thanks, MJ. If anyone wants a good laugh, look at the chat. That's hilarious. Uh, let's talk about some of the differences between kind and nice. MJ, still laughing. Um, Kind is authentic, meaning that kind you can trust. Nice is fake. Kind is honest, even when it's hard. Nice is actually dishonest. And you guys, I've got a confession. Hi, I'm Curtis, and I'm a recovering nice guy. If you would have asked anyone 10 years ago who Curtis was, every single person would have said he is the nicest guy in the world. Oh, you will not find a nicer person. And I found out that nice was not actually so nice when a friend called me and he said, "Curtis, nice is not only dishonest, it's manipulative." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, hold on, time out. You're telling me I'm dishonest?" He's like, "Yeah. When you don't share an opinion that could have some conflict around it, when you don't help someone see a destructive behavior, when you're not that kind of person, you're not being honest." And he was right. I love Jill's session because she talked about bravery, and kind is brave. Nice is cowardly, but it's deceptively cowardly. It's so deceptive. And that's why these counterfeit emotions do such a good job of mimicking or putting on the mask of the original, is because we think we're in a virtue. My whole life, my nice behavior, I thought I was living virtuously. That was I like put the badge on. I'm feeling so proud about myself because I'm so dang nice, but it wasn't. It was actually cowardly. But it did it with a smile. It was very pleasantly cowardly. Then nice is or kind is direct, whereas nice is indirect. Kind is lovingly confrontational, where nice is appeasing. This is a big one. Kind is surrendered, where nice is controlling. And it's funny because when I talk about surrender with men, they're like, not doing it, not waving the white flag. That's, I'm going to stay in that boxing ring. I'm going to do. And we're not talking about that. We're talking about the surrender of transcendence, that we do our best and give God the rest. We don't control the consequences. We don't get to pretend like we have control. Whereas nice, we do. When we're nice, we're trying to be controlling of other people's emotions. Kind is welcoming. I mean that kind will lean in. Nice, it leans out. Nice is way back here. It's like, hey, I'm gonna put on the smile, but you be over there and I'm gonna be over here, and let's not get too close because there could be confrontation and I don't want to rock the boat. So it's way over there. And it has strings attached, whereas kind is unattached. Kind is willing to have those big conversations in an unattached way. It doesn't create what I call the covert contract, whereas nice does. Have you ever had a friend that did something nice and you knew that if you didn't repay that favor in at least that amount, you're going to be hearing about it, right? And it comes with this covert contract that says, as soon as I do something nice for you, then you're going to have to do nice back to me. And there's this, yeah, this under the covers covert contract. Kind is genuine, nice is pretentious. Kind is secure, and this one is really important for workplace. Kind is secure, whereas nice is very invalidating. Kind is always safe, and nice can never be safe, specifically because no one understands where your boundaries are. If you're nice, there's no distinct place that says, this is where I end and this is where you start. And there's this ambiguity that creates an insecurity. Kind is genuine. It holds boundaries, and this is one of the key points of kind. Kind holds boundaries, and kind starts with self. Kind is quick, and this is also really important in business. Kind is quick. Kind will see a destructive behavior and it will say, okay, I need to address this in a really quick manner, whereas nice is slow. And if you've ever done this, do you see the little buttons at the bottom that say raise hand? Okay, if you've done this yourself, raise the hand. Have you had an employee that you knew was not a good fit, that wasn't working out, that wasn't meeting goals, that didn't perform how they needed to perform, and you kept them on at least a week longer than you had, or maybe a month, or maybe 3 months? If you've done that, hit the raise your hand button. Yeah. Yep. It's so true. That is a nice behavior. And there was one of our employees back in my nice guy days. We moved him 6 times. We moved him in the company six different positions because he was so pleasant and I wanted to be nice to him. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I didn't want that confrontation. I didn't want the conflict. And and when we finally let him go, it was the best thing we could have done for him. He found a company that fit him perfectly. He thrived, he blossomed. Like he was a completely different person because he found his fit. Kind would have done that quickly. Nice, you guys, it took almost a year before we let him go. And it was not kind. Kind is caring, kind is curious, and kind is grateful. And let's take a look. Going to turn it over to Jen here. Let's take a look at how this drives performance through genuine connection.
Thanks, Curtis. As I took over this role as the chief nursing officer at my hospital, the one thing I heard was we can't move the hospital into high performing. And it is a hospital that should be in the top decile. I heard words like stagnant. And what I heard from the admin team is we do all of these things for our employees. We buy them presents, we spend way more money, and they still just won't engage. And I had heard Curtis and I had worked together before in a previous role. And I knew right then, I feel like we're going to be too nice. And as I was really diving in, I had a department, a clinical department that was the worst, the lowest engaged, the worst outcomes. in a 33 hospital system. They were bottom decile. And so as I started to dive in, what I really diagnosed is that the leader was being nice. And really what that, do you want to go to the next slide, Curtis? And what that looked like. So this is Department A. I talked briefly in outcomes about Department B, but Department A, I had this nice leader. And what I was noticing is the employees weren't adhering to any sort of pay practice or policies or protocols. What we were seeing were lowered patient outcomes. We were seeing high premium because they were doing sort of what they wanted. And the manager allowed it because she was sympathetic. Oh, it's a hard unit. The patient population's vulnerable. So I'm just going to sort of sit back. The leader started to not show up. She wasn't present with them. And that was strictly to avoid conflict. So instead of having to address what she was seeing as fairly dysfunctional, she took her step back, as Curtis noticed. And so I started seeing her being less present. She wasn't addressing behavioral concerns in her check-ins. And so we started seeing check-ins just go away. So she wasn't connecting to the team. And so they were filling in the blanks themselves to survive. So this niceness of, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I don't want to address what's going on because what I heard is a bad day. I don't want to involve myself if they're just having a bad day. Bad days turn to bad behavior, which really lowers outcomes and performance of teams. So there was no interventions for behavioral concerns, for clinical concerns, for skill set concerns. Everyone was just allowed to continue with their comfort level, increasing the incivility in the unit. So that was sort of like that first thing I noticed. You can go to that next slide, was what I would term it as bullying in the workplace. There was some bullying, there was some hazing. So turnover was increasing at a rapid rate. So that first year turnover was 60%. So 60% of caregivers who started in their first year left before their first year was up. And to me, that means I'm getting in there, I'm taking a look around, I'm headed out the door. So that told me culture wasn't great. We had 33% total employee turnover. So when you're hazed, when you're bullied, when protocols aren't followed, you start to feel unsafe. So what initially feels good in the moment, right? Nice is instant gratification. It feels good right then. You don't think about the long-term impact of what happens to a team. So then we started to see lower patient outcomes. So things that shouldn't be happening because we had lack of adherence to those policies and procedures, we were starting to impact patients. We had the lowest engagement in the system. Now people won't even engage in what we need them to engage in because they filled in their own blanks. They're looking to survive in a very dysfunctional and nice environment. So pretty soon what that looks like as senior leaders is you start to hear more escalations. So things aren't going well. We've noticed, I've noticed, you should look at. So as a senior leader, when people start bypassing the leader of the department, you really should perk up and try to get in there and understand. And as I got in there to understand more about what was going on, I realized she wasn't addressing the concerns that had come her way. And then that next slide. And so to counteract what was happening, I didn't have a leader in the moment who could commit to kindness. That nice feeling is a leader comfort. It's not for the team's benefit. They think it is, but it's really their own comfort level because I'm so uncomfortable addressing concern. I'm so uncomfortable making you be better or driving you to be better, influencing and inspiring you to be better. So we did make a leader change. And my first act after we'd made that leader change was to sit this new leader down and we went through nice versus kindness. And I did have Curtis come in and re-educate my entire team in pretty close and how they could really drive performance based on the philosophy that Curtis.
Jen, I think you froze just 1 second. Back up like 30 seconds, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, not at all. So we worked with Curtis to with this one leader and took that philosophy for this team in particular. So the conversations started becoming more direct. It wasn't, you're allowed to have five behaviors and we'll ask you to be nice and we'll ask you to stop doing those. It was one and done. We bring you in, hey, this is a behavior that doesn't work for us. Here is the long-term impact. So explain the why. And then we send them back out there to improve. If you didn't improve, we brought you back in and asked for a bit. And it was a good fit conversation. What does this mean to you? I know what was happening, and the other half left, which is great. We didn't want people to hang around creating a perfect example before. So then we started measuring outcomes. The previous leader didn't want to stress out the team by paying attention to goals and outcomes. So without goals and outcomes, you can't drive a team together to purpose, and then you don't have alignment. So in order to align and drive the team towards purpose, we did give them outcomes, and we do measure those, even the bad ones. And we saw increased improvement in overall outcomes. We started to recognize the team. I think one thing that happens when you start being nice is you do forget to recognize. When you're being kind, you're addressing those behaviors and you're recognizing when you see the improvement. And so without recognition, you can create a team of entitled employees. So entitlement can come from a lack of recognition when they feel like they're doing well, but they're receiving no feedback. And now they have to inflate their ego to say, no, I am doing a good job. So recognition can kind of be, it's a gray zone. And so we did work really hard with that leader to improve. These were the 6 key things we did differently to be more kind and less nice. And I will say, kind doesn't mean mean. It means direct. It means honest. It means connecting. When you connect over something that's hard, that is genuine and it's lasting and it's bonding. And that is what we have seen with this unit. You can go to that next slide. So I want to share the outcomes from moving from kind to nice. And I've done this now in 3 departments. I'm going to, one department is well into it. The culture is now kind versus nice. My second department, so in blue is that first department I've been talking about. So not as 3%, a 3% drop in turnover isn't significant, but I did mention we were still losing quite a people by trying to turn around their own their own conformity and being able to stick with us and align with us in being more kind and drive performance. I want to highlight the engagement of the team. So 3.83 to 4.06 in 3 months. So we survey our caregivers quarterly. And so every survey we were seeing an increase by sticking to kind. Kindness actually promotes stability, which creates safety. And that is what people are looking for at work. They're actually not looking for presents. They want recognition, like reinforce the good job, but we don't have to be nice and placate and please our employees. They know they have to perform. When we stop allowing performance, you get what happens in this pink box. So I had a leader who actually stuck with nice, and nice works for a minute. I mentioned earlier, you see that short-term gratification. So this is a 6-month look. We have watched turnover start to increase. And I didn't pull this quarter's data, but the turnover is higher. People are leaving because they're starting to feel that lack of safety. Her engagement has dropped significantly. And symptoms I've seen where she's moved from kind to nice is their patient experience had dropped significantly. And I asked what they were doing, and it was a tool they had implemented. And as I rounded for that tool to see how it was going, not one nurse had engaged in the tool. So I went back to the leader. No one's engaging in your tool. Tell me what's happening. Kind, right? I'm not gonna see that and then look away and expect her to understand that that's not a priority for me. She said, well, they don't have to do it if they don't want to. I know they're really stressed with the new training. So I was kind and I said, this impacts our patients. We are here for patients. You can't allow them to not engage in the tool. So that's one example of where I've seen her move away from kindness and allow this sort of behavior. Her department has now moved into incivility, where she walked into the unit the other day and she was in tears, and I happened around on her. What's wrong? I walked in and my charge nurse said she hates my shoes. That's how she greeted me. And I told her, we have moved. They don't respect you because you've been too nice. You have not been able to be kind and let them know where we're headed and that they do have to get there with us. She understood, and now we are working with her like we did the Department A up there with moving towards kindness. And this is hard for her. She does cry a lot. Because it is hard, that discomfort of being direct and inserting herself into conflict is tough. And so, like I said, that nice is very short-term gratification for the leader, for yourself. It does nothing for your team. And so, like my admin team who was saying, oh, but we buy all these presents, that makes you feel good. It doesn't make them feel good when they're struggling in the department and they don't feel supported and they don't know how they're doing and they don't know if anything's ever going to get better. So kind really builds the safety for those teams. And Curtis, I'll take it back to you.
Thanks so much, Jen. I love that you have seen a dramatic effect on the teams, on the engagement, on the culture, because that's what kind does. And if you take nothing else from this presentation, here's one golden nugget. Nice sees conflict and does everything it can to avoid the conflict. That is the driving nature of nice. And here's where the magic happens. Kind takes conflict and transforms it into connection. Nice avoids conflict. Kind transforms conflict into connection. And this is such a powerful principle because every time we have the opportunity for conflict, we have the opportunity for connection. Every single time. Because we're different. Because, MJ, did you grow up in France? Is that what I understand? No? French Canadian?
French Canadian, yes.
Okay.
Montreal.
Oh, because you grew up in a different country, because you speak a different language, those things could be conflict, but they can also be connection. Every single time we have a different life experience or we see things differently, that's a way to connect and grow and learn and become more. Nice will avoid that at all costs. Kind takes conflict and transforms it into connection. And that's one of the most beautiful things about being kind. And Jen talked about this, but I think this is a really important concept. As I've shared this concept with thousands of people around the world, funny thing is, like, especially when I share it with like relationship or singles groups or things like that, guaranteed someone will stand up and say, "Good, now I can tell off my ex." and the point is that kind is not mean. And every dyad of emotions, they are part of an emotional pendulum. And the opposite of uncentered is still uncentered. If you look at this pendulum, we have nice on one side, and we often hold up this ball, just like Jen was talking about with one of her managers. They hold up this ball of being nice and it gets heavy and it's this great big steel ball until we can't hold it anymore. And when we drop it, what happens? We go to the other side. We swing all the way to the other side. But what we find in the center, what we find when we're centered, when we don't need the emotional mood swings, that's where we find kind. It doesn't take this massive effort to hold it up on each side. That's where we find kind. Kind is not mean. Kind is loving. and it's direct. It's all those things we talked about. So let's do a fun experiment. Pull out your phone again. Or pull out your phone. And before you scan this, let me tell you what we're going to do real quick. So you're going to scan this QR code, and it's very simple. You just have 2 questions you need to answer. So everybody go ahead, scan that, and let's look at what happens. And this is going to be a group activity, so everybody's going to be doing it together. So pretty simple, pretty easy. All right. Did everybody answer those questions? Okay, is there anybody that hasn't answered? Anybody? All right. Well, guess what? This is an example of nice behavior. So this was a study done back in, I believe it was 1963, where they took a group of people and they did this exact study. These were the same lengths of lines, and they said all you have to do is match 2 lines in length. And what we're going to do is we're going to they were 9 plants, and there was 1 person that was the subject. So there were 9 people in the room that knew what was going on, 1 person that didn't. And they repeated this study over and over again. And what they found was that they put that person at the end, and they said, okay, everybody, I just want you to identify which line is the same length as this line over here. And they went through all 9 people, and all 9 people said the wrong answer. All 9 of them. And then it got to the 10th person, and you could see their distress on their face. They're like, what do I do? What do I do? And it got to them, and they're like, yep, I'm going with B as well. It's not C, it's B. And they found this to be true over and over again. And that's what just happened with us. Here's the price of that. The target line was C. Being nice was the social conformity to say, yeah, I will change my answer to B. And the price of this is that 35.7 to 74% of people in the workforce will actually conform. They will say, I'm going to be a conformer. I'm going to go back to nice. Remember the definition of nice? Necius, ignorant, right? This is a perfect example of ignorance, of I'm just going to be nice. And so I'm going to play along as everybody else is doing the exact same thing, because they must be right. I mean, if everybody's saying it, then they must be right. So I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be placate. And that has a severe cost for us. And so one of the other pieces of this is what's called groupthink fiascos. And there was a study done in 1972 by Janus that showed, now listen to this wording, cohesive teams. How many of you said, let's have a cohesive team in your career? Cohesive teams actually suppress dissent. They rationalize poor decisions and often overlook warning signs to disastrous results. These nice teams, they actually rationalize poor decisions, just like changing the answer from C to B. And what happens in kind cultures is kind cultures opens up the idea for a healthy dissent. It opens up for conversation. Instead of saying my side, your side, it says, what is the best solution rather than the right solution? And in my last company, we actually assigned someone whenever we were having really important meetings, whenever we were having these critical meetings where we were discussing strategy or product or things that really mattered in the company, we assigned someone to play devil's advocate. We actually assigned someone to play the other side. where we might have all been saying, oh, this was fantastic. Oh, this is such a great idea. One person had to argue the opposite so that we could see all aspects of the discussion. The other part of nice culture is that it
Bless
takes
you.
takes into account. Oh, did somebody sneeze? Well, bless you. It takes into account the social proof or the social conformity. So Cialdini and Goldstein, not too long ago in 2004, demonstrated that conforming or nice behaviors to social proof and authority cues silence creativity. You want a really boring company with no creativity, be a nice culture. But if you want to make sure you hit the market shifts, that you see the competitive threats, then have a kind culture. Have a culture that is willing to be able to say, you know what, this may not be the best idea. Let's take a look at these other factors. And I was having this conversation with a multi-billion-dollar CEO. He runs this multi-billion-dollar company, and he said, Curtis, where were you last week? He said, I had my entire executive team in the boardroom, and I said, you guys stop being nice. I don't want anyone ever to tell me again that I'm right, that yes, boss, that's such a great idea. He's like, stop, just stop. I want you to tell me the critical information. I want you to actually have differing opinions because that leads to creativity. That makes sure we don't miss the market shifts or the competitive threats. And finally, the ethical blind spots. So in 2023, the Forbes Council, they documented cases where teams failed to escalate compliance risk. Now think about this for the healthcare industry or for construction or really critical, important things. They were actually suppressing compliance risks, safety behaviors, all of that, because they didn't want to be branded as difficult or unnice. Wow. That's the cost of nice culture. I don't want to be seen as unnice or difficult. Therefore, I'm not even going to report safety issues. And I know several of you will be familiar with this study, is that this machine you see in front of you was given to test subjects. On the left side was a switch. You can see all the switches along the bottom. On the left side was a switch that produced a very minute electrical shock, about what you would think of a 9-volt battery on your tongue, right? Just a little zing, and that's about it. And if you notice how many buttons there are across the bottom of this machine, on the right-hand side is 400 volts. 400. And the test subject said that all we want you to do is flip the switch one after the other. And they were connected via microphone to someone in the other room that was going to be getting the electrical shocks. They were actually going to be receiving these electrical shocks. And they flipped the switch, and you could hear over the microphone like, oh, that tickled. And then the next one, oh. And then the next one, oof. And as they continued, you see the large amount of switches there. They continued to get feedback from the person in the other room that they didn't see, all the way up to where it said danger, severe shock. The one right before this, you probably can't read it. It says extreme intensity. And 100% of participants reached 300 volts because they didn't want to be seen as unnice. And what happened was the person in the other room actually fell silent. They gave out a scream and fell silent after the 300 volts. And yet 65% continued to deliver the maximum shock. Now, luckily, it was an actor. They weren't actually administering electrical shocks to the other person, but it was an actor that produced the effect. And um, and so this goes to show that as leaders of organizations, when we exert authority in a nice way, or we try to get people to be conforming, or have these wonderful cultures, everybody get along, we're actually doing danger. We're putting our companies in danger. We're suppressing creativity. We're losing $493 billion a year. And so then the question is, well, what do we do about this? What do we do about nice culture? And how do we go from nice into kind? And this is where the model comes in. Oh, actually, before the model, here's some of the other nice behaviors. And no one has to raise their hand on this one, but think about yourself and then think about your team members. Can't say no. That's an incredibly nice behavior. Approval seeking, conflict avoidance, poorly defined boundaries. This one is huge. Poorly defined boundaries. Caretaking of others instead of caring for others. I never get mad. The repressed emotions, holding up that ball on the side of nice. They're the hero, the fixer, the white knight. They have poor self-care and self-sabotage because they put other people in front of themselves. They're the victim. They have so much resentment. And their needs are never met because they're being nice. So who are we nice to? Who are the people that we're nice to? Here's the profiles. Number one is the bully, that dominating, assertive person of you have to do it this way, you have to do it my way. Another is the emotional vampire, that they're going to suck all of your emotions out, and it's really hard to just do nothing but be nice to them and say, "Oh, you poor thing, I'm going to be part of this victim mentality," which is the next profile. Then we're also nice to people we're responsible for. We don't want to hurt their feelings. We don't want them to leave the company. We don't want them to be upset. And finally, the diva or the expert. The people that have a lot of money, that have a lot of expertise, we often kowtow because, well, they must have it figured out. So my opinion is not as valid as their opinion. And you can take, actually, it's the nice type assessment on counterfeitemotions.com, which is really fun because it shows you who you're typically nice to and what kind of nice you are. There's 6 different profiles of nice. But let's talk about the model. How do we get out of nice and into kind? And the first thing is boundaries. Then we go to listening and validating. Third is to invite. And actually, I think everybody talked about this. MJ, Jill, everyone talked about this, and is that inviting. And then we talk about surrender and repeat or release. So let's talk about boundaries. MJ, this one was specifically for you. This is a map of the US, and that's Utah, where I live. And that's not Utah, where MJ might live. MJ, are you up there?
I'm in North Carolina, but I was raised in Montreal. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So boundaries are the foundation of kindness. Kindness starts with self. And a fascinating thing that I found in my research is you cannot be kinder to someone else than you are to yourself. You can be nicer. Oh, you can be way, way nicer to someone else than you are to yourself. But you can't be more kind than you are to yourself. And boundaries set a very distinct guardrail. And that's one of the reasons boundaries are safe. Why kind is safe is because you know where I end and you begin. There's not this mixing, this codependence. There's not this conformity. You have a very clear idea. And one thing we could do an entire hour around how to set boundaries because most people do it wrong. Most people set boundaries incorrectly. They think they're setting a boundary, but they actually create threats or ultimatums. And if just the very brief of it, when a boundary has the words if and you, it's not a boundary. If you ever use the words if or you, it's an ultimatum or a threat. A boundary can only be set for self. You cannot say, if you don't stop yelling, then I'm going to do X, Y, Z. That's not a boundary. That's a threat. And like I said, we could spend a whole hour just on this one topic because it's so important on how to effectively set boundaries and hold boundaries.
We do have 5, just being kind as a moderator to say that we have 5 minutes left. I sent you a note, but I think you were in the middle of stuff. So I'm sorry for the late notice.
Thank you, Maggie. That was very kind. And we are right on track.
Great.
Thank you. So the one thing I'll say about boundaries is that boundaries are not communicated with words. Boundaries are communicated with action. And this is really important. Boundaries are not communicated with words, they're communicated with action. The second is to listen and validate. And going back to the profiles of who were nice too, like the victim or the emotional vampire, a lot of times they want us to jump on the bandwagon with them. Oh, look at how bad my life is. Oh, it's so horrible. And we do. We jump on the bandwagon with them. That's not what I'm talking about with listen and validate. I'm saying validate them as a human. Validate them as a human going through a hard experience. We can always do that. No matter what they're talking about, we don't have to give an opinion. We don't have to say you're right or you're wrong. We don't have to say, oh, they're such a horrible person, let's go beat them up. Nothing like that. We can just validate that they're having a hard experience. And we know what that feels like. And as soon as they feel validated and heard, their walls will come down and they'll be open for the next step. The next step is invite. And we invite into 3 things. Number 1, we invite them into the conversation. Number 2, we invite them into feedback. And number 3, we invite them into change. So with each one of these, with each one of those invitations, a wall comes down. When we say, hey, would it be okay if we had a conversation around what happened on Tuesday? As soon as they say yes, a wall comes down. Then you said, would I be able to give you some feedback, something you may not have seen? Next wall comes down. And so that's our invite phase. The next one is surrender, is we have to let go of pretending we have any control of their response. And finally, by the way, if you haven't read the book, Letting Go by David Hawkins, highly suggest it. Amazing book on transcendence. Finally is repeat or release. Start at the beginning, look at your boundaries, listen and validate, invite, and then repeat. And at some point, only as a last resort, we let go. And with that, thank you so much for letting us share about kindness. The fact that you are here in this conference, a conference focused on kindness, shows what kind of people you are. And I'm so grateful that you were able to join us. Again, if you'd like to connect with Jen or myself, here are our LinkedIn profiles, and we'd love to continue the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much. Thanks everyone for participating. I really do think that the pivot has worked out really well. And this virtual session was super informative and validating. And gosh, sometimes being kind instead of nice is much harder than you would think, right? But in the interest of being kind, everyone, please remember to fill out your evaluation form. I know that Curtis and Jen would love to get the feedback, as would we at Hero. So thank you. See you all in the next session.